Manos, calling from Greece, pronouns are he, him, wants to present an argument against a specific type of God. Ooh, what type of God are we talking about, Manos?
So the specific type of God will be defined in the argument. So just it's a syllogism. So it's a divine hiddenness type of argument. Should I present it?
Go for it.
So premise one: if an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God that wants to have a personal relationship with every person exists, then they could and would prove their existence in a way that convinces everyone and let them choose if they want to have a personal relationship with them. Premise two: a lot of people are not convinced this being exists. Conclusion: therefore, no powerful, knowing, all-loving God that wants to have a personal relationship with every person does not exist.
Okay, classic Schellenbergish.
Yeah, that's the
So
argument for
Manos,
non-resistant non-belief.
Sorry,
so
what
Manos,
the, what the,
are you presenting this as a good argument or as a bad argument? What's your? I'm all.
I want to hear your objections or what you think, or if it could be worded better.
Oh, okay. So what you're describing is a version of, as Paul was saying, Schellenberg's divine hiddenness argument. Specifically, you didn't really include the non-resistant thing, but the fact that, if there was a God that desired a relationship with people, they would have this relationship. The fact that they don't suggests that this God doesn't exist. I think that there are problems with the argument, both in general and with the way you've structured it. But I think the divine hiddenness argument in general, on that category of arguments, are the strongest arguments against gods. I don't think we need arguments against gods because the arguments for a God haven't met their burden of proof. But the fact that we can also make good arguments against God, I think, is pretty strong. And so I would recommend you look up and read, like, even starting at Wikipedia articles on the argument from non-belief, so that you can see what other philosophers who've written on the subject in detail, how and why they worded theirs different from yours. Yours could end up having something that theirs missed or lacked, and vice versa. So I just recommend digging in on divine hiddenness in general.
Sure. Could you point the more problematic, I guess, part of the argument?
Your
Well,
first
one
premise is,
problematic. Go ahead.
oh, sorry.
Please.
I was going to say your first premise is long,
Yeah, yeah.
unwieldy, and contains a number of different things, and also presumes that or the arguer knows what a God of this nature would do. It's entirely within the realm of possibility that there could be a being who desires a relationship, but desires it based on a volunteerism sort of thing, and realizes that any steps it takes towards that relationship would be overbearing, in the same way that we look down on people. Like, if you adopt somebody, so now you're not blood related, and then at 18, when they're legal, you marry them, we tend to look down on that as a really problematic scenario where someone could have been groomed or unwarrantedly coerced into that sort of relationship nature. And it could be the case that there is a God that knows better than we do, and therefore does not want to be excessively coercive. And so you would need to include something in the argument to show why that's not the case. That's just one of many potential objections that I could think of.
So, yeah, but okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, another problem with it is that even if it carries, so let's say you come up with this definition of God that works great, and you've sufficiently decided that you've given what their desires might be, and you've nailed all that stuff down. Typically, ends up coming to this non-resistance factor, and the non-resistance factor can be entirely compelling to an individual. So for myself, divine hiddenness is very much a linchpin for where I'm at, because I can know for myself what the contents of my thoughts are. In fact, the contents of my thoughts are the only thing I can know for sure. So if I am being rigorous with myself, I can check whether I'm being non-resistant, at least at a conscious level. Now, that being the case, I cannot demonstrate to anyone else in the whole world that I'm genuinely non-resistant versus just saying I'm non-resistant. So it becomes
Exactly.
this very compelling argument for me personally, and I can nail it down and say, absolutely, divine hiddenness totally works for Paul. But I can't use that to go out and demonstrate to anyone else that God doesn't exist because they have no reason to think that I'm not resisting.
But
So
isn't
The
that an
that's a
absurd, isn't it
Go
an
ahead.
absurd claim to say that no one is actually an atheist? Like, I think it's a very bizarre objection to premise two, actually.
Well, it is an is a as far as I can tell, the claim that no one is actually an atheist is a claim that not only would they be unable to demonstrate, but that I already know is false.
Right,
This ties into what Paul was saying, essentially, that I know that I I am convinced that I am rightly considered to be a non-resistant non-believer. I genuinely do not believe, and I am genuinely not resistant to that. I don't know how to convince somebody else of that. And so, for this reason, when somebody tells me that they believe in a God because of their personal direct experience with the divine, well, I can't prove that they haven't had personal direct experience with the divine. All I can point out is why I'm not willing to accept that that's the case, why I'm not willing to accept their conclusion. But I'm generally willing to accept that someone is honestly reporting their own state to the best of their ability most of the time. So I don't, as somebody who's a non-resistant non-believer, I don't have any problem with the notion that there are millions, if not billions, of non-believers out there. But
right.
until there's a way to actually read minds and show that and confirm the accuracy of that, you're kind of stuck.
Uh,
to your
uh,
point. I've had named apologists who have large ministries tell me to my face that I am mistaken and that I am resistant. They will die on that hill, that there are no
Yeah.
non-resistant
Or that you're a
non-believers.
believer, that you're a believer and you're not
Or they
aware of
even
it.
that I'm a secretly evil. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And just suppressing the truth, as I clipped earlier. So there are
I mean,
that category of people that absolutely will insist that there are no real atheists.
but can we actually say we have a very good reason to believe that people don't believe in a God in there? Like, even if we take the statistics, or as you said, about 1 billion plus people claim they don't believe, isn't it the kind of Occam's razor to say that it's more probable that they're all lying? It's not more probable that they're all lying, and they're probably most of them are telling the truth.
The problem is that depending on which model, so for example, when I was a Southern Baptist, everybody knows in their heart that God exists, but God has given them over to a reprobate mind, and so they will deny it, and they've been deceived by Satan. And so when somebody tells you that they're a non-believer, that is a reason for pity because it's clear that they have been so deceived by Satan that now they're not even aware of the state of their own mind because God can't be wrong. And if God says that he's revealed himself to everybody, that, it is the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. And that for the fucking Romans, I'm
Romans
gonna
one
not gonna
twenty.
get the best right. Yeah. For the
Ro-
hidden things are made evident and they are without excuse, etc. If you believe that and are convinced that you are being given this information by an infallible being, then necessarily the people you're talking to are wrong about the state of their mind.
And that's the
So
thing about
again,
divine hiddenness is the goal of divine hiddenness is actually to prove there is no God. So it's a super aggressive goal. And so the only kind of person who even cares is someone who does believe. And so that's why these little nuances matter there. And Matt's just pointing out the kind of resistance you're going to get from anyone who's even going
mm,
to care about your divine hiddenness argument, right?
yeah, can't I just point out though how weird the claim is that, oh, you know better what I think.
They're not claiming
Yes.
that they know better. I mean, you can point that out, but they're not claiming they know better. They're claiming God knows better.
They think God knows better. Yeah, okay. But in the end, I'll ask you this: do you think a better or the best version of this type of an argument convinces you that this type of God that wants to have a relationship with every person does not exist? Are you convinced that they don't exist? This type of God.
I will say divine hiddenness is why I'm willing to say that I am more of a hard atheist. Divine hiddenness, I'm convinced that there isn't a God of the category of the type that doesn't want to have a relationship with me. There may be gods that don't care about me, and that's cool. But
Yeah.
this argument is good enough for me personally that it puts me in that category. So it's a great argument. It's just not very transferable.
What about you, Matt?
I don't have anything to add to that.
So you, so you're convinced that a God that wants to have a personal relationship with you does not exist? Probably.
I not only see no reason to think that there's a God that exists, I am actively convinced that there is not a God that wants any sort of relationship with me because I'm not resistant to it at all.
Okay. So you both agree that it's a good argument. But the way I present the way I made it is not very sufficient, I guess.
Well, I'm not. So we're sitting here on a live TV, and you read it off, and the first premise was too long for me to actually type it all in, but I got the gist of it. And as soon as we realized what it was, I think
Mm.
all I'm saying is there already exists an entire category and classification and group of arguments from divine hiddenness, argument from non-belief, argument from non-resistant non-belief. A lot of these come from Schellenberg. They've been around for quite a while with a lot of discussion about it. Your version could be better. Your version could be the best. But if I had to place bets, I would bet your version is probably not the best because the other versions we have are the result of theists and atheists battling over this particular version of God. They're a little bit more robust. They don't try to collapse three different terms or three different premises into one, essentially. And so I'm just recommending you go look into what's out there. And if you find problems with what's out there that yours solves, cool. Present it to more philosophers.
Good. I see. Okay, I'll check that out. A very, very last question here about this topic. So, is it a reason more sophisticated theologians think that God doesn't actually want like actively a personal relationship, and it's more about our parts connecting with that, supreme reality and all that stuff? Do you think that's a reason? That's my final question.
I'm not sure I
I
understood
didn't
it.
follow it. Yeah. Can you ask one more time?
In more sophisticated theology, people are claiming that God, they don't claim that God actually wants, like, tries to have a relationship with you, and just God is just out there. And if you want to go and connect in some, superficial, ultimate reality, transcendence type of level, you go there and connect with that. That thing doesn't care about you actually that much.
I understood most of that, but I didn't catch the ending.
So
So for the people who are saying that God doesn't want a relationship with me, okay, then why should I care?
No, yeah, sure. I said, they would claim that you should care because that's good for you, but God doesn't actually care if you do it or not. He doesn't try to have that connection with you. It's all about if you want to connect to that supreme reality and supreme divineness, I guess, you know.
Okay, then they need to prove their case, or I have no reason to
Sure.
care at all what they say.
Yeah, yeah. My question was if theology have turned into this type of, uh, uh, narrative.
Well, there are Calvinists and certain sects of Calvinists. This whole argument is actually quite impervious to. For example, would they just say that God has chosen who He's going to choose, and there's nothing you can do about that? So, if you're asking if certain theologies have evolved to deal with this, I mean that seems like one. Was that the question?
Yeah, pretty much. How this argument have changed theology? I guess that's my question. If you know about it, that's it.
I think
Calvinism. There's different flavors of Calvinism, but you can look that up.
So
yeah, and I think the hiddenness arguments, if I'm being as fair as possible to people I might potentially debate, I gave one of the strongest objections to divine hiddenness and non-resistant non-belief. I think there's more in that. What I've frequently heard is that God has an understanding of what would be the best of all possible worlds, and we don't. And so while we can sit here and say, well, if God really wanted a relationship with me, he'd do A, B, C, or D. And that is because we are reaching the conclusion based on our limited understanding, whereas God has an unlimited understanding and a completely accurate understanding. And so whatever it is that we might have missed that would excuse and dismiss the divine hiddenness argument, that's what God says. And my objection to that is, okay, so but now you're saying God's got his reasons and we can't understand them. And so let me push back one step further, which is, why didn't God create us so that we were capable of understanding his reasons? Because you don't have to know and understand everything. Like, I don't need to know quantum mechanics to know that the physicists who understand quantum mechanics definitely understand, to whatever extent they do, what they're talking about. And I don't have to understand it for them to be capable of finding a way to explain it where I can grasp an aspect of it. And so if the simple aspect is, why are you hiding? That's a great one, because now when I push back and say, no, 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 God could have created me in such a way where I could understand why he's hiding, then they get to say, well, he did. And he's not going to, he knows that you actually do understand that he can't come and tell you that without violating his hiddenness. But his hiddenness is essential, which he understands. And he knows that you have sufficient evidence, perhaps not to understand his reasons why, but to understand that he does have reasons because he's superior to you, because God's already written it all on your heart anyway. It's this little tight little circle where they get back around. And it's like, wow, yeah, once you believe in magic, anything is possible.
Yeah, this type of best of all worlds is just bizarre to me, especially if you believe in a hell. So the perfect God plan is
Right?
you actually get in hell. That's bizarre. Actually, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And the world in general, when you look it out, it cannot be the best world God could come up with. Like, come on. Anyway,
Yep.
We agree.
okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Hispanos.